these images was I just Googled object study because, you know, Google, you can find pretty much anything you want to find on there. And I just wanted to share with you just some different varieties because there's a lot of different approaches to this idea of an
Mhm.
object study. Um, and the idea of an object study is to choose something and to investigate it from multiple angles and viewpoints, sides. You know, so it's could be a matter of holding it and drawing it at a particular angle. You know, maybe you're setting it in front of you. Maybe you're laying it on its side and shifting it around. So it's just looking at it from different sides. And this is just a really good exercise, of course, to practice observation because we've been talking about how drawing is so closely linked to observation, and practicing those skills is going to translate into improving our drawing skills. And then two, it's getting this idea of drawing the same thing over and over again, but slightly different. And I think that idea of repetition is, of course, how we learn. It's how we get better. Of course, we've talked about how the more we practice drawing, the better we've seen that in our own drawings and have talked about that. So I think this is just a fun way to kind of push it. And this idea is like obviously something you can repeat with so many different objects, right? And you know, at the bare minimum, I always think you have your hand, right? You could draw your opposite hand in all these different positions too. So at the bare minimum, it's like you always have something attached to you that you could use. But here's like an example of shoes that could be sort of interesting. I think shoes are really fun to draw. In fact, we should do a shoe class soon because they're so interesting, and there's all these different like little curves, and it's fun to how could you interpret the stitching, and then shading them can be sort of fun. So shoes are a really fun thing. I found this image and I thought this was kind of fun, maybe an idea of cropping or zooming in, depending on what type of object you have. And maybe like Cheryl, like especially your wine jug could be sort of cool, you know, if you crop different views, it could almost sort of look abstract in a way, which might be sort of fun as you render some of that shading and sort of capture the reflections in the glass. Could be a fun approach, and maybe you could sort of divide it into a grid. So again, I just like to show you different options, different things. I thought this hot glue gun was really fun. I like just how it really captures just the contour. There's no shading, right? But we're seeing all of the different components. Like you're looking at, you're like, I know that hot glue gun, right? Like I feel like it's the one we all have or something, you know? And I love all the different viewpoints. The other thing I want to mention here is we see something called foreshortening that's happening. If you look at the hot glue gun on the left, and I want you to notice how in the distance the lines they're starting to converge and go back and come together, and as they're coming toward us, they are getting wider. Okay, now this could have the opposite effect. For example, if you point your finger like directly at your eyes and look at your finger, you're seeing this in a foreshortened view, meaning the lines are getting wider as they go back in space, and they're converging as they're coming toward you. So looking at objects in different viewpoints is going to help you start to feel comfortable with some of that. And I'm going to tell you, some of the viewpoints are challenging and they feel a little uncomfortable and maybe not the one you'd want to draw it in. And that's why I think this is such a good exercise to do, because it's going to challenge you. Here's a stapler. I thought this was kind of fun, just rendered in ink, you know, something different. If you want to try this in another material besides graphite. And then here's another example of something zoomed in with all these kind of different views. Something, you know, the key could even just a simple little object, looking at it from different views, different angles, cropping it, kind of compiling it can be sort of interesting too. And then let's see, I want to show you one other little thing quickly, and then we'll get going. I just want to show you some different drawing styles. So today, as always, draw any way you want, always, but there's different approaches to this depending on what your intention or what your individual goal is. And you know, this might be something we start together and then you continue on your own, obviously, because there's many different things you can do. But you know, if you feel like you want to render or add any shading to this, you could. That's an option, but don't feel like you need to shade what you draw today. So I want to show you, this is like a gesture drawing, meaning like quick, loose, expressive. A lot of times it's used to capture like figures or an action. Gesture drawing is used for that a lot, but oftentimes it's really, really quick and loose. And it's just to kind of capture like this kind of general idea or essence of this object versus like every little actual detail you see. It's almost like an expression of it. So this can be a really fun way to draw sometimes. Sometimes I love just drawing like this, and I'll really quickly, you know, draw as many different viewpoints as I can within this allotted time. And sometimes speed is my goal. And so then I would go for gesture drawing. Sometimes my goal might be something like contour, cross contour drawing, where I'm really wanting to investigate the form and I'm wanting to look at, you know, all these different angles and planes, like the planes of the banana. Like if you look at the different directions of those lines, we're seeing this form. So sometimes that's my goal, is I want to investigate the form. So cross contour lines might be really fun for you to try today, where you're filling in these lines and following the form. Or perhaps maybe just a simple contour outline of just the object itself, its major details. Like if you look at the banana, you're seeing, of course, you know, the end piece, you're seeing the stem, and you know, those kind of lines that suggest the planes. But there's no shading, there's no other, you know, major details, but we can tell this is a banana, right? So, you know, I just want to show you some different styles depending on what your goal is today. I'm going to kind of be probably focusing on mostly contour and not doing a ton of shading, just so I can start to get some different viewpoints in, so we can start to kind of see what that looks like. Cool. So my other thought today, oops, I'm going to really quick, Susan sent me an email that she couldn't get in, so I'm just going to really quickly send her the link so she can join us. Okay, she should probably be popping in here in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to switch to my camera. I've got my little makeshift desk here at my parents' house. And I think, I don't know, I think I'm interested in this banana today. So I'm going to use the banana for my object. And I've got an HB pencil, and I've got an eraser and a sharpener just in case. Hey, Susan. I'm glad you could get in. Sorry about that. Yeah, I tried to keep my email open just in case something like that happens, so I can get you the link. So we've just kind of talked about, just to kind of give you the quick crash course catch up, we've just talked about kind of different viewpoints of an object, depending on what you want to draw. And we talked about, you know, different styles. You could approach this with contour lines, cross contour. You could shade this. This could be gesture style drawing, loose, quick, expressive, just depending on what your personal goals are for the drawing. But I just kind of, you know, start as I always do if I have an actual object. And I think it's nice to hold the object because you can then turn it in different ways and look at it from different viewpoints, you know, and maybe try to look at it from a foreshortened view, you know, kind of holding it as it's coming toward you, which of course you can't see that view, but as I'm holding this banana right now, it's coming toward me. And I just kind of look at it from different viewpoints. And then, you know, you don't have to maybe decide how many different viewpoints you want to draw ahead of time, although you could if you want to grid your paper. And keep in mind, you could draw cropped viewpoints. And you could also try to challenge yourself. Like if you look at this banana, the way I'm holding it up to you, like that can be kind of tricky. Like how would you draw that? So you can even try to challenge yourself with some really tricky viewpoints if you want to. And again, keep in mind, this is just practice. Our goal here isn't to produce something finished and polished that looks beautiful and amazing. Our goal here is to investigate an object, okay? And to look at it and to start to understand, you know, how we can translate something three-dimensional onto something two-dimensional. You know, again, practicing this whole concept of drawing that we've been working on. So I'm going to draw a little bit smaller than life, but sometimes I just like to start with one and then I'll just kind of fill in different viewpoints all around with, you know, kind of no rhyme or reason. But again, if you want to grid your paper out or do something like that, you absolutely could. But I'm just going to pick starting a viewpoint, and I just pick a point. And again, when we're drawing something from observation, direct observation, we want to spend most of our time looking at the object. You could even do some blind contour drawings where you're not looking at your paper at all and you're only looking at the object. That can be fun too. So, I mean, there's many different approaches depending on, again, your personal goals. And it could be fun to try all these things too. But again, I'm just kind of keeping mine a little sketchy, but focusing on the contours. I didn't plan mine ahead. If mine runs off the page, I'm just going to let it. And that's kind of up to you, like if you want to let it be cropped, run off the page or not. I just sometimes think that can make an interesting composition with different viewpoints. If you have different kind of sizes, let things hit edges. But again, it's just whatever you think looks good. And just, you know, keep in mind, it's okay to erase, it's okay to stump yourself. And, you know, challenging ourselves is how we get better. It's how we learn to problem solve and become better artists and better drawers and all of that. So, you know, you don't feel like you can erase, and you can go slow and take your time, or you can go quick and be expressive. And you know, sometimes, like I mentioned too, we're just trying to capture like the essence of the object, and maybe it's not rendered entirely realistically, and that's okay too. There's a lot of different ways we can express things and interpret things when we draw. And that's why I just always kind of go back to like, what is your intention and your goal? And I think you're going to notice probably the more you draw this object, the more you're going to get to know it, the better it's going to start looking. You know, and you could put in some, like I've got some of these little, this banana's starting to go a little brown here. So I could put in some of these markings if I want to. Sometimes it might be fun if you have something like this, like a fruit, maybe I peel it for one of the viewpoints. But there's so many different, you know, angles that you can explore with just one simple object. So I think this is something I like to come back to too if I'm ever like, what should I draw? I'm like, okay, well, I could just pick something simple like a banana, an apple, a vase, something I have right at home. and practice drawing that. And it for me, it just kind of takes the guesswork out of some of it sometimes. It's just a way for me to practice and not think about what I'm drawing. Taking my second view a minute. You know, it can be a challenge sometimes to look at the different angles and try to determine, which direction is this line actually going? How could I turn, how can I create that same effect that's happening here? And if you're not using shading or value, sometimes you have to use line to interpret those kind of shifts in plane. I think, changing your viewpoint and looking at things at different angles is going to just teach you so much. And you can easily do this with, like landscapes too, or, you could go sit outside or sit near a window and, maybe you're drawing one viewpoint from a window, one viewpoint from outside, but it's kind of the same scene essentially. That can be a great way to practice too, the same kind of idea. Just let that go off the page. Let's see, I think I'm gonna try, while we're just kind of drawing, it might be nice to just play some music. I think we can you hear that? It's kind of soft. Yeah, nice. So sometimes when we're drawing, it's nice to just kind of zone into some music and kind of focus on our process a little bit. I mean, feel free to pop in and share something or say something if it strikes you, but otherwise I'm just gonna go ahead and turn this music on, and I'm gonna even shift my paper around. I'm gonna just move my camera up a little bit. I can see some different points, but sometimes it's even fun to just move your paper in a different direction too. So you can even try that. I think I'm gonna go ahead and peel this banana too. You could even create some overlap if you want to. Like I'm just going to continue this underneath this other one I already drew, just depending on your composition.